You're listening to the Mile You're In podcast. Everything running related from 100 meters to 100 miles. And now, here's your host, Phil Patterson Jr.
Guess who's back? Back again. What's going on, everybody? Listen, I've been so excited to talk about this race, to record this episode. I've had people hitting me up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, text messages. Like, everybody's just, they want to know what happened this weekend. So let's get into it. Long Haul 100. This was my second time running the race. Last year, if you remember, I ran my PR in the 100-mile distance, qualified for Western States. Things just went so well last year. And going into this race, as I was saying so many times to everyone I talked to in person or on social media, I felt like this was the race. This was going to be my sub 24 run, or as close to it as possible. I definitely felt like I was going to PR. I felt like I may not get sub 24 yet, but I definitely felt like I was going to PR, which would have definitely equaled another Western States qualifying ticket. And definitely would have meant a finish, would have meant no DNF at that point. That's obvious. So just going into the race, I felt great physically. I felt great mentally. Running just felt fun. It felt consistent. Almost in a sense, it felt easy. I felt like nutrition, hydration, everything was good. It's been colder and colder longer in South Florida than I think it's ever been. So I felt like I was getting real comfortable with running in the cold and running with more than I usually would wear, with it being so hot down here. I knew the course. I knew my spots I'd like to run and where I would walk. I had a feeling I was going to have to sleep compared to last year where I only slept for 15 minutes. I had that in the back of my head, but I just felt like even my planning, I felt like I had everything set, and I got to the race location, got my stuff, set up my camp, had my dinner. I was relaxing. It was peaceful. The rain was coming down. That was bringing in the cold front. Just listening to that rain dropping onto the tent and watching it through the shadows, the reflections and everything just dripping down the tent it was just soothing. I was in an ASMR type experience in my tent, just relaxing, getting ready to sleep. To paint the picture, everybody, for the most part, everybody sets up some sort of tent, some sort of little station, because you do pass that area 3 or 4 times on every loop. So that's your chance in between the 8 stations, or if somebody's with you, that you could get something that you might need or drop something off, whatever. Everybody that does that usually sets up the night before, so they don't have to worry about it the morning of the race. Usually that's done while it's daylight, because it's real dark out there. You don't want to be messing around with that late at night when you got to get up early and do a race the next morning. I'm laying down, starting to doze off, and I hear these 2 girls right next to me start setting up, and they are just loud. I'm thinking, it's so peaceful and quiet out here. You could whisper and still hear each other from 10, 15 feet away, and they're talking as if we were in a football stadium packed with fans. I was like, please just set up your stuff and go. Like, I want to go to sleep. I didn't say that, obviously, but in my head, there were a lot of those type of thoughts going through my mind. And I was even messaging my friend, Monique. We were joking about it. They left. I started to fall asleep, and then they came back. And now they're eating, and they're talking about stuff, and they're just laughing, and they're loud. And I'm like, of the entire area of space that they could have set up, they set up right next to me. The only other person I think that was camping out that night, or at least in that area. Like, you could have gone anywhere, and you were right there next to me making the most noise. You didn't hear anybody else that was possibly out there. Nobody else but them. And they were right next to me. So I didn't really get to fall asleep until about 10 o'clock when I was dozing around 8. And then I realized I left some stuff at home that I should have brought. The same setup I had as far as sleeping and everything I had last year, and I slept okay. It was a little uncomfortable, but the only way to make it more comfortable would have been to just bring way more stuff than I wanted to, and that would have been a hassle in itself. So I treated this like I did last year as far as preparation for the most part, but I just couldn't get comfortable sleeping. I couldn't sleep on my back because the angle that I was set up on wasn't comfortable. I could sleep on my sides, but my hips would start hurting, or I would start to get a little cold and it would wake me up, and that's when I would realize I was uncomfortable. So it was a lot of off and on sleeping. I still feel like I got a decent sleep, but not the kind that I wanted, and I was afraid that was gonna come back to bite me, and eventually it did. But I got up, I still was confident, I was feeling good. I mean, the cold, once I got up, got dressed for the race and got out there, I felt comfortable. I was like, this is the weekend, it's gonna happen. So the race starts and I'm feeling comfortable, I'm feeling smooth. I was running the pace that I wanted. I was analyzing the course to make sure nothing had changed. I'm behind these two guys that are kind of talking to each other, and a third guy comes up and asks him, how you feeling? And he said something I never thought about until that moment. He said, I hate this part of the race because everything feels so good, and you almost start altering your plans thinking, I can do this, because I'm feeling like this, and this is gonna go great, and none of those things I was worried about are gonna happen. Like you start to feel like everything that is happening right then and there, all those emotions and physical feelings that you have are gonna last. And deep down from experience that's not the case, that's not reality, but you feel like that's gonna happen. And you're trying to psych yourself out of that and say, nope, stick to your game plan, don't do nothing stupid, prepare for the worst, go off of your experience and your knowledge of this. But sometimes you have the negative of what I would say is running the mile you're in, because you're in that mile and it feels great, and you ride that high, and you don't realize you're going past what you set your expectation of. You're going further, pushing yourself further than you wanted to and that you planned to, and that's where you just have to, in those first miles, especially of these longer races, you just have to say, slow down, trust the process, trust your planning. You don't really want to try new things on race day. Everybody always says that, but sometimes in these longer races you figure you have so much more time to make up for it. And a lot of us in these ultras use the term time in the bank, where you're going to crash and burn towards the end, so you try to build up as much in the beginning to make the back end that's slower not as negative impacting. I really got to learn to listen to myself. I got to listen to my own podcasts and just listen to myself sometimes, because I felt great, and I was running, and not intentionally, but I was running with two of my friends, Joe and Lucian. All three of us were running pretty much the same pace, and we were kind of leapfrogging each other and back and forth, passing each other and joking around, talking, and things just felt great. Honestly, like if I had to shorten this in any way, I would say, honestly, the first 30 to 35 mile range, I felt great. Everything was clicking. Hydration was perfect. Nutrition was great. Everything was sitting well. I didn't feel sloshing. I didn't feel bloated. No cramping. My sweat was almost non-existent because of the colder temperatures. I felt free. I was having fun. I felt so confident. I can't stress this enough. And at the 40-mile mark, it was like I hit that wall. Something happened. I don't know, but it wasn't just me, because I noticed as I started paying attention to that and looking around, I'm like, man, I haven't seen Joe for a while. I haven't seen Lucian for a while. And, we've done so many of these that I think we sometimes have too much confidence, and we block out the negatives so much that we lose sight of reality. And I feel like that's when I started to humble myself a little bit more. And from mile 40 to 50, I said, all right, we're going to walk a little bit more. We're going to try to conserve some of this energy because I know when it gets colder, I should feel a little bit better. But when it's colder, I get sleepy. And when it gets dark, I get sleepy. So you mix it being dark, it being cold, I'm going to get sleepy. So I was preparing for that. You would think by this being the 9th time I've done this race, well, not this race, but 100 miles, you would think I have things dialed down. I don't. You're always learning. Lucian said it best. It's never easy. These things are never easy. No matter how many you do, no matter how experienced you are, no matter how many times you do the same one, there's just so many factors when you count 100 miles. So many different things can happen. So many different variables can come into play. It's no two things are the same. It's just, it is what it is. And no two races are the same. So as well as I think I've game planned for something, and as well as I've prepared for the worst and expected it, something else always happens. So I hit mile 51. I'm at the halfway point. I'm at 11 and a half hours. I start comparing to previous races and how I'm feeling at that moment. And I tell myself, yeah, I know we still have 12 and a half hours to do basically what we just did, but that's not happening. I'm already hurting bad and it's starting to get cold. At this point, let's forget plan A of 24 hours or less, and we're going for the PR. Anything under 26 hours and 45 minutes is an accomplishment. Well, that was about to go out the window too. Because as I got to, I don't know, 52, 53-ish, by then the sun's going down, and the sun was going down very quickly, but so was the temperature. Now, before you do the last 2 miles of the overall loop, you pass your setup again. So I knew I had about 2 to 3 miles where I could get my stuff, not technically 5 or more. So I was like, okay, it's hurting to run as much. I prefer to walk a little bit more than I am doing right now, but I need to get back. One, because it is getting dark and I'm gonna need this headlamp real soon because it's pitch black out there. But 2, it's getting cold quickly and it's making it almost painful to run because your bones are starting to hurt and you're shivering, you know, and that cold air is going right to your lungs and your chest is starting to burn. So I did the best I could to get back to camp, and I put my stuff on, and it took me a good 3-4 miles to shake that off and warm up. And I got back to my camp now, and I want to get stuff out of my cooler, but I know my hands are going to go extremely numb or I might get sick. So thankfully, my friend Lewis, he had mutual friends, Rita and David, that were crewing him and pacing him, and they actually coincidentally set up right next to me. And what was nice about that was they could help me if I needed help as well. And Rita came through in more ways than she probably understands, because she was able to get stuff out of my cooler without me having to stick my hand in the ice water. When I needed certain things that were in my tent, she was able to get in there and get it for me, so I didn't have to put myself through the uncomfortable pain of squatting or crawling in there and trying to get out. So she helped me a lot with getting stuff that would have just made it even more difficult for me to finish this race. The next loop, it's now pitch black dark. Seeing is not a problem. I'm pretty alert, but it's dropping even more temperature-wise. And now I'm realizing I need to put on more clothes. At this point, I'm grabbing anything I can fit because everything's, nothing's too large and loose-fitting. So I can't really put everything on because it just wouldn't fit, or I'd look like Ralphie or whatever his name was from the Christmas Story movie. Like I just would be walking like a penguin. So I put on what I could, and again, it took a good 3, 4, 5 miles before I could finally feel warm enough and comfortable. And at that point, I started the zombie walk. I'm starting to fall asleep. I'm swaying side to side. I'm on an uneven trail, which makes it more difficult because now you're stumbling a little bit and you're tripping on roots. And the battle came at that point where I had quit on myself. I told myself I quit. I got to the halfway point of the loop, which typically I was excited to be at because the Thompson family was out there manning the second aid station, and they're a family to me. I won't even say they're like a family. They are a family. Julie, Pops, Tamaya, they're like a mom, dad, a brother. They're family. And I was excited to see them every time, and it was something to look forward to. But this time I felt kind of upset because I knew I was going to be letting them down with what I was about to tell them, especially because you guys know I'm a huge Buffalo Bills fan, and the game was going on while all this was happening. So I had the race director telling me scores whenever he saw me, Tamaya telling me scores. It's just like people were excited because at that point, Buffalo pretty much was about to win. It was pretty much a lock with everything that was going on and how much time was left. Buffalo was going to win the game. They were just running out the clock. And here I come, just dragging feet, head down. And I told Tamaya, I said, man, I think this is it. I'm done. And I don't remember what he said. I just remember how he said it and the type of words he used to try to encourage me, and the fact that he didn't believe me. It was still encouraging because people are going to know you better than you know yourself sometimes. It reminds me of my birthday run when I wanted to quit, and Monique looked at me and was like, basically, shut up. Like, what are you talking about? And when I wanted to quit one time at Wildcat, my sister was pissed off at me because she's like, what are you talking about? You just need a break. And I realize now that that's my problem is I don't like to take breaks because I'm afraid of stopping and just losing time, and afraid of getting stiff and not being able to maintain certain paces. And it ties into, like I've said in previous episodes, putting too much pressure on myself. I think I've chased certain goals that I've been able to accomplish, and knowing that has motivated me to continue to do it, especially with 100 milers, but to the point where they're not really realistic, or at least not yet. Like, I still have a lot of baby steps to go before I can get to where I would like to be. And I learned in this race to finally stop putting that pressure on me as well. So I learned a lot of stuff during the low that I was grinding through, despite the fact that I was pretty much quitting. Normally when I'm at that point, I'm telling myself certain things to try to talk myself out of it. But this time, everything I was telling myself was to convince me to stop. It's just, I could not find anything within me to push through and to continue to grind. And that's when I knew I was done. I was at peace. And during that time, I kept telling myself, we're going to at least finish this lap and stop at 81. That way we'll see the race director and we'll tell him that we're dropping out, and that's it. Because another thing too, especially with the pandemic and everything going on right now, and the measures they were taking to make sure everybody was following certain rules and guidelines, I started to feel sick. I didn't think it was like a COVID related thing, even though I know those type of symptoms and reactions usually, they'll typically hit you later on from what I've heard and read. But, because I was still tasting food, I was still tasting fluids, I could smell things. Lord knows there were people taking dumps in the woods and I could smell that. It was just like, I felt that cold/feverish feeling that you get, like those chills, but the cold sweat. Like, I just felt sick, and I started to worry, like, did I get COVID while I'm out here? And in that sense, I was like, man, I don't want to get sick but also get other people sick, There's hundreds of us out here right now. Like, I don't want to put other people at risk if I'm sick. So that was kind of weighing on me heavily. And then at that time of night, or just in general, you're hearing a lot more rustling in the woods of the animals. And it seems like because of how quiet it is and people aren't as loud on the course, that the noises seem to be amplified. And at one point, something was real close to me, and I kept shining my headlamp over towards it to try to scare it, but it seemed like it was either getting closer or following me, and I was getting really scared. And then something hit me where I was like, you know what? Come bite me, come attack me, because at least if you do some damage, even the most minor damage possible, I could use you as an excuse and go there and say, look, I was attacked by something. I'm done. I can't continue. Fake an injury. I didn't want to die, but I was like, whatever you are, come here. I will let you bite me, or you can scare me to the point that I trip, fall, and have some sort of blood dripping from me. I need a reason for people to not try to encourage me to continue, because at that point I didn't want to, but I knew I could. It was like, you hate it because you know you can continue, but you don't want to, but you do. This is where I'll always say 100 milers are a mental battle, because if you could push yourself past those moments, no matter how many of them you have, you will finish. 9 times out of 10, people drop out mentally, not physically. So I don't even know. It was less than a mile from camp, and it finally hit me, and I said, you know what? I'm not even going to finish this loop. Like, there's no way I'm passing my tent to do 2 more miles like this just to quit. I might as well quit as soon as I get to my tent. There's no point. What are those 2 extra miles gonna do for me? Nothing. Like, if they were to help me get my yearly goal, I'll add those 2 miles somewhere down the road of the next 11 months left in the year to make up for the 2 miles I wouldn't do. And I got to my tent. The service was very bad this year compared to last year, at least for me. So I just typed what I said on Facebook in my group. I sent it. I didn't even look to see if it went through or not, because text messages and stuff were, it just wasn't going through. So I didn't even know if that was going to go through. Put my phone on silent, so if it did and people started messaging me, no one could get to me. I even stopped the watch and saved the run, because I didn't want to pause it and then have this motivation to get up, because I had a feeling it was going to happen. And I just took off whatever I was able to with how uncomfortably painful and stiff I was. Shut off the light in the tent, and I went to sleep. I didn't set an alarm. That was it. I told myself, when we wake up, we'll pack up and we'll head out. Because at that point, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I knew, or at least I thought I knew, that I was going to sleep until like 11, 12 o'clock. I figured I was going to get a good 8 hours sleep. I just felt that tired. Of course, just like the night before the race, I was not finding comfortable positions to sleep in, amplified by the pain that I was in general. And then you throw in, you're literally sleeping on the course. You got a DJ playing loud music. You got people screaming and celebrating as they're coming out of the last spur, heading into the finish. The people on both sides of you that are coming in and out of camp. And it's just, there's so much going on that you can't get a good sleep unless you have headphones or whatever on. And I didn't go through that. So I kept waking up little by little, but it was around like 6:51. That's the time that stands out to me. I think that was the time I woke up and I looked through the tent. I could see light. And I said, okay, the sun's coming out. At least it's not nighttime anymore. I looked at my phone, saw the time. And as I sat there, I sat up for a second and I was like, man, I feel pretty good. And without hesitation, I start doing the math in my head. I got 22 miles to go. How many hours left? what's the slowest pace I could go at this point and still hit before 32-hour cutoff and finish. I was having a hard time doing the math in my head. I was just, there was just so much going through my head emotionally. I said, screw it. I was just reminded of the quote, it's better to fail trying than to not try at all. I'm one of those that has an issue with that do or do not, there is no try, because without trying, there is no do. If you don't even try, how are you going to do something? So that quote wasn't going to do anything for me. It was the quote I usually go by of, if I'm going to fail, I'd rather fail trying than not trying at all. I'd rather be out there and miss the cutoff and not finish because I didn't finish in time. It was better than sitting in my tent moping and complaining and making excuses. No. I couldn't sit there and listen to everybody else celebrating and watching people suffer through some even worse than what I was going through and keep making excuses. I grabbed my watch, put my shoes on, I put on some clothes, and I headed out. Said, we're gonna give this another shot. We've been here before. And when I finished that loop, the race director and the timer, they were like, there he is. He's back. Other people were seeing me and they're like, oh, so you're relying on social media, huh? And it became the joke. Like, so many people had seen the post. I never checked, like I said, to see if it went through. I didn't check when I got up to read any messages anybody may have sent me. And I was going to go out there and people were going to find out when they found out. That was it. Like, most people were going to find out that I finished when I posted the belt buckle finish photo, and they were all going to be shocked that I finished after saying I quit. So yeah, I had some running left in me thanks to the rest. I was awake. My confidence and positivity was back. I felt strong. And I was knocking out some good miles. I knew that was going to die pretty quickly just because my body was fatigued. So I was riding that high as long as I could. I got to one lap to go, and I was very surprised to see how many people were still out there, especially people that were ahead of me, that were still out there that I thought would have been done by then. And it just helped me feel a little bit better about stopping and resting, because I realized so many other people had to do the same thing. So many that are even more experienced than me. So many that have come from those colder temperatures or have at least run in them more often. People that were more prepared elevation-wise. Just all the factors that can come into play. They have more experience than me, and they were dealing with the same problems. It is what it is. There's no getting around it. It's reality of these type of events. So being out there and struggling with them and seeing the pain in their face and on their body language, just seeing what they're going through and knowing you're pushing through just like them and vice versa, and you're encouraging each other as much as you can, it really helps. I won't ever judge somebody for dropping out of a race at this point, because as many times as I've quit and come back, we all have motivation. We all have things that drive us. We all have other goals and aspirations, and again, we all know what we're dealing with more than anyone else, especially in certain moments. And seeing a lot of these great athletes that were still hanging out there with me, you can't say enough. It's one of those things you look back on and you're like, man, I was a part of something pretty awesome. And I got to 5 miles left, and I was talking to Maya, and it's funny because I didn't want to be rude. I wanted to finish the race at that point. And me and him are real good friends. We talk a lot. And he was telling me all the details of the Bills game. And his mom finally was like, Tamaya, I think Phil wants to go. So he was like, well, I'll walk with you. Let's go. So what I thought was going to be he would walk with me until he finished telling me about the Bills game turned into him and I having one of the coolest conversations, a deeper conversation than we've ever had, just because we never really had that much time to talk to each other. And we talked about so many things, life and sports and running and family and children. It was a real nice conversation. And he kept saying, man, I'm sorry if I'm slowing you down, or I hope I'm not holding you up. And it almost made me feel bad, because I'm like, dude, I didn't even think you were going to walk this. I mean, you just recently did a 100-mile of your own. You've been up this whole time volunteering, and now you're walking with me. It was like I needed his presence in those last 5 miles. And I'll tell you, as slow as we were moving, the time went by so fast, and it was so fun. I honestly lost track of the time and the mileage, to where if there wasn't a finish line at that point, I could have kept going, because it was fun. It almost didn't feel like I was at the end of a race at that point, especially not 100 miles. And he finished the last 5 miles with me, and it was really awesome just to finally experience that with somebody, because my first race, I experienced it with a good friend, Kevin, and my sister's usually there at the finish line, or my wife was there once, or friends, the race directors. But to have somebody walk that in with you and have the discussion, and just what we had, that connection we made in those last 5 miles, was so awesome. And, I'm forever grateful to him for that. It's something he just did naturally, really helped me get through the final 5 miles of that race. And, I look back, I soak in all the memories, all 9 of the 100 milers I've done. You take every accomplishment that you've achieved, every goal you've reached, every one you've gotten closer to, and I just think about the different plans. None of them have really worked. There's always been bits and pieces. So I'm going to take all the knowledge and experience that I have and make a better game plan. Stop trying to chase other people's goals. Stop trying to accomplish other people's achievements. Run my race, run the mile that I'm in, and accomplish what makes me happy. Because at the end of the day, like I've said many times, most people don't care, or they're gonna forget. And when you're sitting at home and you're looking at those belt buckles and those medals, and when you're looking at everything that reminds you of your races and experiences and accomplishments and all of that, it's just you and your moments, your experiences. That's it. Because no one's gonna remember those things that you said to yourself, those things you felt. It's you, your life, your race, your mile. Only you can battle that, and only you can overcome it. People can encourage you as much as they want, but you have to go out there and do it. One thing that really dawned on me as I dwelled on failing to run another PR and another to run sub 24 at all, was many of us want something, but we don't want to do what it takes to get it. And I realized there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that you don't really want it that bad. Because there was a sign that you saw for a while. Eventually somebody picked it up. I almost wanted to take it myself at the end of the race if it was still there, but it said something along the lines of, if it's really important to you, you'll find a way to do it. That type of message. And it was like, damn, that hit home, because it's true. Like, I want to run sub 24, but not bad enough to do what it takes to get there. At least not yet. Maybe one day I will, because I wanted to run 100 miles, but I was never running for that goal. I was never signing up for any of those races. And then one day it just hit me, and I went for it. I didn't really care about running sub 25Ks for any period of time. And then all of a sudden it just happened. So just because we want something, but we don't want to do what it takes to get there, doesn't mean we're not as motivated or we're not as good as the next person. It just means that's not our goal. That's not something we desire. That's not something for us. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's no reason to put pressure on people to chase those things. So if somebody doesn't want to run 100 miles, so be it. Who cares? If a marathon is a huge goal to them, man, go crush that marathon. If running that marathon in 5 or 6 hours is huge to you, man, go get it. Who cares if you're not running sub 4 or if you're dead last? The dude that finished dead last and the woman that finished dead last in this race, both of them had more excitement and joy on their face than some of us did finishing this race. It's just, we all have our different battles. We all have our different motivation. And that's why when people drop out, we can't judge them as much as we do. It's not our race. It's not our battle. We don't know the experiences they're going through. You know, I got a message from Monique after the race where she said she was going to send me a message to try to talk me out of, she was going to comment basically on the Facebook post that I had made to try to talk me out of it. But after she saw everybody else's message, like kind of showing compassion for me and mercy for me, she thought she was going to be, you know, the B of the group. And she decided not to say anything, but she knew what I was capable of. Just like my sister, she knew I could overcome this. It's one of those things that at the end of the day, you have to look at what you've accomplished, what you know you're capable of, how far you know you could push yourself, what are you really wanting to accomplish. I went into this race with 4 goals. The first 3 dropped out very quickly, but I still had a chance to accomplish the main goal, which was to finish, and I finished. And as bad as it seemed, it still wasn't anywhere close to my worst races. I've had worse finishes than this, so it wasn't even that bad, and that's why I can't beat myself up over it, because I only slept 3.5 hours. I've had races where I slept 8. So, you know, it's like, when I ran this race, every mile, I swore I had a different name for this podcast episode. They went from great, inspiring, motivational titles to the worst. Like, how could I describe a DNF in the most, sympathetic way? The name of this podcast changed so many times even after I finished, as I just relived moments. I thanked God at the finish line, like, man, you got me through this again. You kept me safe. You know, I was grateful for so much. I got a wife that loves me. I got a son that loves me and who's fully healthy after everything he went through to start his life. I'm sober for 9 months now. I haven't had depression or suicidal episodes in 9 months. I mean, it's just so many good things that I couldn't let the negativity experience during this race bring me down long enough to just give up. So many people in my life haven't given up on me, so who was I to give up on myself? If you have enough time to accomplish a goal, go chase it. When you see these older men and women that are going to school to get these degrees and it seems pointless, it now makes sense to me, because if you have something you want to accomplish, you're going to do what it takes to get it, because you still have time to do it. It's that simple. So I end this podcast with that message to you guys, to motivate you to chase whatever goal and dream is eating at you, burning within you to chase. Whether it's school related, work related, relationship related, whatever it is, if it's something you truly desire and you believe that, who cares what you believe you'll feel at the end, because you'll probably feel something different anyways. Just chase your dreams. Understand things will not always go the way you planned, even if they've gone perfect through training. When the time comes, stuff happens. Grind the lows, ride the highs, chase your dreams. Never say never. Don't give up on yourself. Trust the process. I could go on and on and on. If I haven't gotten to you yet, there's another message out there waiting for you to hear or read to get you where you want to be.
Thanks for listening to the Mile You're In podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check out previous episodes and more at HeelStriker954.com.